Hello, I'm Colin Myers, and today I'll be taking you through, while watching my mini documentary, I'll be taking you through the processes and the experience of editing in a broadcasting class. And first, we'll start out with an interview of my fellow student, Braden Crasher.
So some of the most powerful, like not really most powerful things, but cool things I've done with editing, I've done, well, really we've done so much editing, it's hard to like come back to it, but probably the biggest thing was audio. Like being able to take my big clip and cut it down into just a couple seconds for whatever I need of audio, or if I like had a voice crack, my voice got super high pitched for some reason or got really deep, I could cut that out with normalizing. I could also change my volume at any time I wanted. Like if I was a bit quiet during a certain part of a sentence, I got real quiet for who knows why, I could bring the volume back up, and it's the same with everything else. So it's really just quality control.
So that was Braden. He really liked talking about those audio levels. With his audio, he likes to get real scientific, I guess. What he thought about editing and stuff. So now, let's go on to Steve and see what he thinks about editing.
With the power of editing, you can make one person sound like, well, more than one person. Something that I've done with editing is make someone sound goofy. They've sounded like they were going... Yeah. And one thing I definitely have to say with editing is it's very complicated. One thing that's very complicated about it is figuring out how to get videos, onto Adobe. That's probably got to be really complicated. And I've had to overcome that with, help with Mr. Glaza, and just figuring it out, just getting it over with, and yeah.
So that was Steven. He, just summarized, he thought it was a little bit challenging, but not too bad. You can overcome a lot. And he thinks, the editing's pretty fun with what you can do with the voices. He gave that perfect example. And now, let's go on to Zeke, one of our professionals.
Something interesting that I've made while editing was, I made, like, one of these times I made a couple stop motions, but I edited them together, and that was pretty cool. That's something I did. Another thing was, just like a small little video with like little effects with it. And then, something that was hard to do, like with this class, or like any problems I had, a couple times, a couple times, like one of the editing softwares will just crash, and like sometimes you don't save it in time, so then you have to redo everything. It's horrible. But usually what I do is I make my edit and then Control S that John, so that it doesn't crash and I don't lose it. So yeah, that's about it. See ya.
So that was Zeke, and he, since he's been here a lot longer, he's had more experience, and he's talked about messing up sometimes, but, he's got it down now. And finally, for our interviews, let's go talk to the teacher of this classroom, Mr. Jordan Glaza, and see what he has to think.
So the most powerful thing that I've edited was back very early in my career. I'd just gotten out of school. I worked for a news station at the time, and we had went to film a camp. It was a special camp for kids with muscular degenerative diseases, sometimes MS, sometimes Lou Gehrig's disease, but the whole spectrum. And this was brutal for the kids because, of course, you see your friends playing, but you're either wheelchair bound or whatever. It was cool to see all the kids come together and have a space that there's games, there was other people who are along their journey in both development and overcoming and having a good quality life. And that day, we filmed something like 6 hours worth of footage, but to cut it down, and ultimately the footage went into a telethon. It went into different things to promote the camp and promote the news station. But what was cool about it was just to interact with those kids, just interact with those students and the staff, and see how their lives were changed because of that filming. That is probably some of the most powerful stuff that I've ever filmed. second part to your question, you had asked, what's the challenge of teaching students now in Columbia City High School film, video, how to do that. Probably the most challenging part of having a class is every student comes in at a different level. And the subject that we look at in this class is familiar. You know, everyone's seen TV, everyone's had their TikTok and stuff like that. But a lot of times our brains are so good at processing it that we don't recognize what we're actually seeing when it comes to medium shots, wide shots, close-ups, because our brain just automatically processes it. So what the challenging part is to get that initial key turned in the student's brain, to get them to start watching, and not just from a audience perspective, but watching as a creator who makes video, who designs something to tell a story. I could go on for days.
Okay, that was Mr. Glaza. Obviously, he was talking about what he's done with editing and the challenges of teaching. So now let's go on to some actual, the processes of recording and editing.